Welcome. This is AFlame Ministry, the show where we talk about a lot of different topics about how to share the message of God's love and the joys and challenges of doing that in the 21st century. And my guest today is Christi O'Hara, PhD. She's a neuropsychologist specializing in recovery from traumatic brain injury and military-related traumas, including post-traumatic stress and moral injury. And she's done a lot of volunteer work, especially at Dwight David Eisenhower Army Medical Center for 9 years, and served as an advisor and internship supervisor for Women Veterans Social Justice Network, and a number of other things. And she's also the co-author of Rehabilitation with Brain Injury Survivors, an empowerment approach from 1991, and a author of a chapter in the book War, Trauma, and Its Wake, Expanding the Circle of Healing, from 2012, a number of articles, and edited a couple of editions of Combat Stress, which is an online magazine. She's a graduate of the University of Georgia and completed her internship and postdoctoral fellowship at the Atlanta Veterans Administration Center and at Emory University Rehabilitation Center. She's a military daughter, served as a military spouse, and is the mother of a soldier. Christi, welcome.
Thank you so much. And thank you for hosting me today.
Oh, it's a pleasure to have you here. What is moral injury?
Moral injury is an injury that can occur to anyone, civilian or in the military, when there has been a break in one's moral compass or moral code due to some catastrophic and unexpected event that occurs outside of what one expects would happen. So within the military, it's specific to events that can occur while you're in service, not just in combat. Most people are familiar with some of the traumas that can occur in combat, but it can also occur, for example, in garrison, or in training.
So can you give us a couple of examples of what might be a moral injury?
Yes, we basically look at moral injuries in terms of different types. So there are injuries of commission, omission, and witnessing. So, for example, an act of commission may be I'm killing children, and that's not in my moral compass as something that I can live with later. An act of omission may be I saw someone brutally wounded by their comrades, and I said nothing and did nothing, and I live with the guilt of that. An injury of victimhood is where I may be in the military and I am raped by my comrade or by the enemy, and I have to live with something that has happened to me that is horrific and that is a moral break in my trust in others, especially if it's someone within your own military brigade or squad.
So sounds like these are going to be very traumatic experiences that people are kind of haunted with and haunted by for many, many years. And they're not always the visible injuries.
Correct. That is correct. So what we're talking about, and this is the difficulty in some of the treatment interventions that we do for post-traumatic stress disorder, which may be cognitive behavioral in nature, is these are what we call soul wounds, heart wounds, spirit wounds. They usually involve strong feelings of guilt or shame or rage or despair, loss of trust, and loss of direction in one's life, a kind of hopelessness.
So would these be potentially a part of PTSD, post-traumatic stress, or
It
contributing?
can accompany PTSD.
Yeah.
In fact, there's a study that has been done with a large National Guard sampling, screening, because we now have instruments to screen for moral injury as well as PTSD, that in the presence of both, there's a higher probability of suicide behavior than thinking, with the moral injury added to the post-traumatic stress. And again, of course, we have not everyone in the military has PTSD or a moral injury. There are some people that can do things without the kind of permanent soul wound for which one may need some kind of forgiveness or self-forgiveness or retribution
Mm.
or some healing path beyond what a medication could give, for example.
Yeah. What you're talking about can go very, very deep into a person.
It
And
can, and unfortunately, many people with these kinds of wounds never speak of them.
yeah,
So they carry them and they avoid other people. And this is the perfect opportunity for faith communities because of the nature of the injury and because in the military, going to chaplains is the one place you can go where it will not go on your record or affect your promotion or your security clearance. When these people come home, our faith communities have an opportunity to welcome them and to provide healing space.
okay. And so you've got a couple of conferences coming up as we're speaking this right now.
We
Um,
do.
and give us a little bit about those conferences, when and where, and then we're going to talk a little bit more about what comes for people who can't come to one of these. And, this may be, you may be seeing this after the conferences have been held.
Right. So there are three organizations that are nonprofits that have come together in partnership to present these. The first, the concept itself came from Dr. Dan Roberts, who has served in the military for many years and is also a researcher. And he has developed the concept of bringing together women veterans, the ones who are often omitted in the discussion in many regards, with chaplains and lay faith community leaders, clinicians, and other people who are interested in having a dialogue about what women veterans military moral injury looks like, sounds like, feels like, what can be done, what experience have women veterans had with their chaplains, good or bad, that might help them to find other faith communities when they get out, and what do faith communities in the civilian world need to know from these people. So our point is to do this in regional arenas, to develop networks of resources and training opportunities and exchange and a richness that we can put all of those resources together electronically and share for people not only at the conference, but for people who may be listening to this program years later, or who may want to have a conference in their geographic region. So the first, I'm going to give you information on where to go to find out about these conferences. If you
Good.
go to chaplainconsultants.com, that is Dr. Dan Roberts' organization from which he developed a nonprofit called Moral Injury Support Network for Service Women Incorporated. The other two organizations are the one that I represent, Women Veterans Social Justice Network, which is a 10-year nonprofit out of Atlanta, and our CEO and founder herself is a military moral injury survivor who has done great things since then. She's a wonderful mentor and leader among women veterans. And the third organization, which is in Virginia, is Leashes for Valor, which is also run by a woman veteran. And that provides support dogs for post 9/11 veterans in need of an animal to assist them for many reasons, many emotional reasons.
So yeah, basically an emotional support dog uh,
Mhm.
type of. Uh,
So the
could
first
also be.
conference is going to be in Charleston, South Carolina on March 26th and 27th at the College of Charleston, who is our host site. And it's only $50 for 2 days to attend, including all the fees and lunches. Every one of our presenters is very committed to getting this information out and this dialogue going. So all their fees have been waived, all their travel expenses they're covering themselves in order to uh, give the opportunity for people to attend this from the region. And by the first region, we're talking about South Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia, Tennessee, Florida. The second conference is going to be in May, on May 14th and 15th at Virginia Commonwealth University. And same thing, all the presenters will be providing their presentations and workshops and at their own cost, waiving all fees. And that one will pull more from the Virginia, DC, West Virginia, Delaware, Maryland area, although we already have registrants for both conference from overseas, including Canada and Europe. So the word is spreading. We really would like to have many veterans, women and men, attend because many veterans have never even heard of the concept of military moral injury. It's relatively new, and yet it's ancient. We kind of set it aside in these years when we've been focusing on brain injury and PTSD.
So, and both of these conferences that you've mentioned, excuse me, in Charleston and in Richmond, was it Richmond area?
Richmond, Virginia.
Both of those are in 2020, so that we.
That's correct, 2020. And so our goal is to have the funding and resources to take this around other parts of the country, where we will host with other nonprofits and other businesses and corporations that can help to support these conferences and bring veterans and clergy and faith leaders and community leaders together.
So, like you said, the hope is to expand these to, the central parts of the country, out west, Pacific Northwest, New England, different parts of the country as well. So people who are watching, if you're not, if this is beyond May of 2020, just look there, go to this website, because there may be something coming up in your area anyway. So,
correct. And they would be listed again at chaplainconsultants.com, or you can type in Women Veterans Military Moral Injury Conferences. You can go to 4WVSJ on Facebook. That's 4WVSJ on Facebook. And continue to look for these opportunities. And there are other military moral injury conferences that will be coming down the pike beside the ones that we are associated with, because there are a few groups of researchers, military related and civilian, who are partnering to develop these kinds of assessment and treatment interventions, because we're looking for evidence-based interventions that will help with this wound.
And that's really important. But for those who maybe can't come or want to build some sort of military ministry in a local congregation, maybe, further away from military bases, but where there's still some veterans, perhaps in your faith community, how can they learn to be more welcoming? What are some of the things that they need to know and can do?
I'm glad that you asked me that. Every faith organization can have and should have, and it's easy to start, a ministry for veterans. Many veterans do not identify themselves as such, especially women veterans are reluctant to say, I'm a veteran, when they're in a faith community, or even when they're in the business world. So if you do not have a faith-based ministry in your particular congregation, it can be started not necessarily by a pastor, although that's a good place to start. You want to have your pastor engaged. It can be started by anyone that recognizes the need to identify veterans, to connect veterans, and to empower them within your faith community. So, for example, my church, our military ministry was started by a retired Army veteran and a very elderly single woman who felt compelled to do something for our active duty military as these last round of wars began. So a number of years ago, our military ministry began with sending and packing boxes to troops that were deployed, and we would take names from anyone in the congregation who knew someone who was deployed. We track how long they're deployed, and every month we have a packing meeting, which we still do to this day, to send deployed troops anywhere in the world a message that this congregation is praying for you and is thinking about you, and we get the most wonderful, heartwarming messages back. Then we realized we needed to identify the veterans in our own congregation.
Mhm.
And for example, on Veterans Day and Memorial Day, our bulletin lists the veterans that are in our faith community, uh, living and deceased, and we have a flag in the sanctuary. There are little signs that you can give within your uh, faith-based community that people are welcome as their veterans. And it's an awkward thing for some people because some families have never met someone in the military and they don't know them. And of course, there's a lot of fear because of some specific examples that, for example, someone that may have PTSD may go off during a service or something. But this is where our faith has to hold and welcome these people with safety and with a sense of coming home. Our goal is to have all of our veterans come home well and feel part of our communities. And our congregations are one of those places that should be open and welcoming to veterans. So there are signs. And so another step that you can do is form a committee. Form a committee of people that are in your congregation that are interested in serving veterans. Look and start to identify who are the multi-generational veterans that we have in our community, and
Mm.
who are their spouses or their widows, who are their children, who are their expanded families, because each one of those people have served too, particularly the spouses and the children. They've served and they've sacrificed, and they're often never acknowledged. A good example is I met someone who was I was getting my oil changed, and I started a conversation with the man behind the counter. And in a couple of minutes, he finally disclosed to me, when I said something about my son being in the military, that his father had been killed in Vietnam. And I don't know that anyone has ever heard him talk about that in his adult life. So we have these opportunities to welcome veterans and their families' stories and to listen respectfully and appreciatively for what they have to say.
What you just said, though, I want to take a moment to highlight that because, after World War II, basically everybody knew veterans because so many people were in service. After Vietnam, the draft stopped during that era, and that was not a popular war. So a lot of those vets never really received a welcome home activity or feeling of gratitude. But now we have, all volunteer military, and the percentage of those who are in the military is far lower than it was during World War II, for sure, and when we had the draft. So, what you're saying is there are people who don't know anybody who's ever been in the military.
That's right.
And so, the whole concept of that, especially for like children these days, uh, they may see something, a movie or a picture, or maybe a Veterans Day parade or something like that. But their whole idea of what does this mean? Who are these people? What do they do? And why are they perhaps a little different sometimes? Um,
Right. So
and
here are another couple of examples.
yeah.
Within the scope of a service, and we do this on Veterans Day, we have our veterans stand and we give them a gift and we pray over them
Mhm.
in appreciation, and for those who are active duty, for their continuing safety, and we pray for their families. This past Veterans Day, we gave each one of those veterans, as we walked to them and met them handshake to handshake, a, um, a coin. And there are coins that are given by different military groups. They know what that is. And we pass that coin to them, handshake to handshake. And there's a history behind that. And they instantly know that we recognize what that history is and that we're giving them a token of our appreciation. Another thing that Sunday schools can do is to ask the children if there's someone in their family who's a veteran, bring a picture of them in from when they were in uniform, and let's put up a display on Memorial Day or Veterans Day or any time of the year of our families' participants. So my father has been up on the wall in his Navy whites when he was about 22, and my niece has been up on the wall when she was in her Army Greens when she was in her 30s, and my son has been up on the wall. So it's a way for the community to see visibly that we not just have, and it's not just active duty, we have active duty Guard members in every state. We have active duty reservists in every state. And
Mhm.
again, sometimes they don't want to identify. I was in a physical facility the other day getting my knee examined, and the young woman told me that was taking the x-ray, and she got talking. She said she had weekend work. I said, would that be in the reserves? She said, yes. And I said, well, what do you do? And she said, I'm in the police. And I said, well, that's different than what you do here. And she
Mhm.
said, I haven't told anyone of my coworkers what I do there. So
Ah,
there's that sense of protectiveness that service won't be accepted or acceptable. And we want to change that. We want to encourage the dialogue, start the conversation, and
right,
then help to heal those who've been wounded.
right. I think, as I think about that healing aspect, my father-in-law, he is now deceased, but he was a veteran of the Battle of the Bulge. And there, when the honor flights started and things, some of the schools in the area, one young man from the congregation where my husband and I served invited him to come and talk to his class in school about what that was like to be in that battle and to be in the service. And that was kind of the beginning of him, after he was in his mid 80s at that time, beginning to open up and share more of his experience. He carried that all those years.
Yes,
And
many of our World War II and Korean veterans kept those memories silent. And I don't think it was till after Vietnam and when we got to the 40th and 50th anniversaries of World War II, and when Tom Brokaw started writing his book about the greatest generation, we started encouraging our elders to tell their stories while they're still alive, so
yeah,
that they're living history. They
yeah.
are living history that they can share with us.
But the whole thing with that is, though, too, that we can help people tell their stories now so they don't have to carry those wounds for all of
Yes,
years, and to do it in a loving, caring way. And so if somebody in your faith community is a teacher, in a public school setting or a private school, you can invite veterans to come in and share some of that, what it's like to be a member of the military, what it's like to suddenly have to go to a different country. Probably not share the moral injuries with the students, but begin to
students invariably ask about those, though, so you do have to prepare someone that they could be ready for any question that a student will ask,
right,
because invariably the veterans I know that have gone into classrooms have students ask, did you kill anybody? They always go for that question. They're curious about that.
sure, sure. And part of that is they see these violent video games. Well, did you
Yes,
kill her? Yeah.
yes,
And that's also an opportunity for a veteran to say, show the differences between that kind of killing and what actually happens in war, and the impact it can have to actually be someone who has to kill somebody else, uh,
yes.
you know, military setting. So,
So I do want to mention that there is the Chaplains Association, the National Chaplains Association has a group that is attached with it that teaches faith communities how to become military and veteran friendly. So, and it's online, and you can join and get a certificate that you have gone through a training program and been given information on how to do that. So I do want to again say that's the actual name of the organization is vmfc.usa.org. So that's another opportunity to get information on this topic of becoming
That,
military.
yeah,
I like to call it military helpful, not just military friendly.
right, right. And I would think that anybody who gets trained to be able to help a veteran who's got a moral injury would also be able to help those who are not veterans who've had moral injuries as well. And because those do occur in our civilian life too, not maybe the same things, but there are moral injuries that people experience in everyday
That's
life.
correct. My hope is that with the tools that have been developed by military uh, mental health people and civilians working together, that we could use those tools and apply them across the board to screen nationally for moral injury, just like we screen for other types of health issues,
Mhm.
because I honestly believe that that may be one of the missing links in why we have the suicide rate continuing to go up in our young people, in our veteran population, and in our older generation too. There are wounds that have not been told that are very deep and that are untreated. And there are interventions and treatments for these. And so our goal is to provide information and networking and communication.
This is wonderful. So please tell us again about the conferences that are coming up and where to get more information.
So the
Just
information on these regional conferences can be found at chaplainconsultants.com, or you can Google military moral injury, women veterans military moral injury conferences, or you can go to 4WVSJ on Facebook. And we welcome all to come to these conferences. We expect them to be sellouts. And if anyone that's listening would like to have a conference come to them, you can contact Dr. Dan Roberts. And may I give his phone number?
if that's okay with him, yes.
I think it's fine. It's 910-690-4964. And he is in North Carolina. So this is one of those beautiful convergences where we have North Carolina and Georgia and Virginia, three different nonprofits groups coming together and working with the local and regional faith communities and the chaplains. I didn't get a chance to say that we will have the chief chaplain of the VA, who is a woman right now, who will be giving our invocation and our opening remarks at both conferences. And we're having chaplains in active duty and the VA presenting, as well as veterans. So we hope to see you there.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Christi O'Hara, and thank you for all of you who are listening. And as I remind everyone, every single day, please find 3 things, a minimum of 3 things that you're grateful for and thankful for, and one way to show a little bit of God's love to someone else. So until next time, look forward to seeing all of you come back again, and we will be back again with another show. God's blessings.